Welcome to the Flicks, Picks, and the Nitpicks, and I am your humble host, Nove718, man, and let's talk about it. I'm finally getting around to doing the Spider-Man Far From Home review, the full review. I'm gonna do a non-spoiler in the beginning and go into spoilers, and we're gonna have a good time just chopping it up about a movie that I actually found a lot of enjoyment in. And it's weird because after I seen it and I'm like, I'm gonna do the review. Actually, I did a review earlier, but I was like, nah, I could do this a lot better because I had like storied out my points. But something told me to go look at some other reviewers, and I was like, yo, I couldn't believe the hate train for it. Or there is a segment of people that hate it. But obviously, it's not like a vocal majority, but there's always going to be fringe people. But needless to say, as you can see from the successful take at the box office, it doesn't matter. There's always going to be people that will not like something that actually is extremely successful and universally beloved. But that's neither here nor there. We are getting into Spider-Man Far From Home. So a quick brief overview is we already know this is the second installment, but this is not the second time we've seen Spider-Man. This is actually his fourth appearance in a motion picture film. The first one obviously was Captain America Civil War, where he shared screen time, of course it was, but it was a way to bring him in and kind of show that he existed and give a brief idea of his origin story without having to give him a film dedicated just to his origin story, because for the most part we pretty much know it. And he showed up in the follow-up was his actual first film. It was Homecoming, and then the next film appearance he actually had was Avengers Infinity War. Then it was Avengers Endgame, where he showed up at the end. So actually this would be his fifth appearance, technically speaking, in the motion picture, which is his second movie in his personal franchise that he will star in, and that's Far From Home. And this will actually deal with everything after Endgame, everything from the 5-year blip or the snap, and we're gonna catch up and see how the world is after Endgame. So, in a nutshell, this film is going to show Peter Parker just reacclimating himself back into school and about to go on a school trip, which is going to be abroad in Paris. And we find out that somewhere in the time after Tony had passed to the time where he gets onto the trip, or we get into this film, at some point or another he developed feelings for MJ, Michelle Jones. Zendaya plays the character, so it's cool. They just trying to speed it up. He's already got an attraction to her, or rather a crush. He wants to tell her. He tells his boy Ned about it. He's gonna use this time alone in Paris to go and express how he feels. And we're off to the races. He goes over to Paris. He leaves his spider suit behind, though Aunt May puts it in his bag because she feels like he should bring it just in case he might need it. And he finds out that there are actually a supervillain showing up in Paris, and basically we're off to the races. We know what this is going to be. Every time he's going to try and find a moment to express to Mary J how he actually feels about her, we're going to be interrupted by the supervillain. An obvious trope, but it's all about the delivery. So, once we find this new supervillain in the town, Spider-Man reluctantly has to spring into action, and reluctantly in the fact that, damn, I can't have a vacation, but you know what, F it, I'm gonna come out here and do what I do, because that's what Spider-Man actually does. And he likes to help people, he likes to save people. That's what he does. So he goes out there, saves people, tries to cover up his face, but he finds out that in the middle of the battle he gets some assistance, and it's by a new face, a new superhero, and he'll be going by the name Mysterio. He helps defeat the villain for him. Spidey feels like, yo, this is cool. There's another superhero out here. I could focus on MJ, and boom. But it's not that simple because Nick Fury is looking for Spider-Man, or rather Peter Parker. He knows who he is. He's trying to track him down, and when he tracks him down, he realizes that Nick Fury is working with the new superhero Mysterio. And basically, in a nutshell, their origin is said to have been that somewhere in the snap, it opened a rift in the world, and now it opened up like a hole to different dimensions. So a villain from his dimension came into our dimension, or what he refers to as the 616. Nice little Easter egg for comic book heads, but that's what we call the main continuity of the comic book universe. So he says he comes from a different Earth that was destroyed by these, what they refer to as elementals, that took over his Earth, and now has him and his fighting force couldn't win. He's the only survivor, and somehow that snap busted a hole that pulled him and the villain into our world, and now he's trying to help fight this villain before they destroy, or villains I should say, before they destroy our Earth like they destroyed his. Simple enough. And you go through the trials and tribulations of how that would work out. And that's really just a non-spoiler of it. You know, you're going to get the same old fun coming of age tropes. I want to tell the girl how I feel, but everything is always interrupting it. You're gonna have this other guy that is the jock, but he is pining for the affection of the same girl that he wants. He's always caught in awkward situations that is completely ruining his time alone with her, until he just has to just accept the fact that when there's trouble, Spider-Man will have to show up, and he always have to leave her behind. And that's pretty much where we get to. But now let's get into the spoilers, all right? Because, I mean, this movie's been out for quite some time, so let's get into the fun stuff and let's just talk about the spoilers. The spoilers is it's all a lie. It's an elaborate lie and a ploy induced by Mysterio to basically, in a nutshell, create a false flag attempt, if you will. Create villains out of thin air, because that's what he does. He uses a composite of drones and how you would call it, holograms. Couldn't get it off the tip of my tongue, but holograms, to actually create this elaborate look of what's going on. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, it's the drones actually creating the collateral and the tangible damage, while being cloaked by what he wants to tell you. And the villains, I should say, are the elementals, but they're not real. They are just figments of a computer generated holographic graphic image that is going to give you a whole story and scenario, and behind it will be the drones that will actually create the damage behind it, so it could feel like this illusion that you're looking at is not an illusion. It's actually a tangible creation that you can reach out and touch, and that can, most importantly, reach out, touch, and affect you in the real world, which is a brilliant way, I have to add, of realizing who Mysterio is, could be, and how powerful that actually can work as a villain, and in a very creative way. Now let's keep in mind, it's very John Hughes, so it's not too much dramatic elements within it. They are, of course, because you're gonna have moments within it especially when he finds out that he got coerced to give up the Edith, which is AI an AI application that is infused in these glasses that Tony Stark had created and left to Peter Parker. Now, it's kind of weird that he would actually leave this to a young child, but needless to say, he left it to him, and now It's all about it's kind of like the MacGuffin of leadership. You know, how we started off this film was Spider-Man coming out of Endgame, really being tortured with the death and the responsibility now left he feels is left on his soldiers in absence of Tony Stark dying during Endgame. Him making that sacrifice left a big impression on Spidey to feel like he had to pick up the mantle and continue the legacy of Iron Man, even though he feels deep down inside he can't live up to it because he's not Iron Man. I'm Spider-Man. I'm just a local guy that fights crime. I can't do what Tony Stark does. That's how he sees himself. So him being left the Edith is kind of him hanging on to this responsibility, how he sees it and what it really could mean to him as Spider-Man and as a hero. So he felt that, you know what, this is way too much responsibility for him to leave to me. And him looking at Mysterio and Mysterio seemingly to have his back every time when he's in the room with Nick Fury. And he's always having these moments with Mysterio because Mysterio could tell that this kid is intelligent. He's not just like a fighter. He's a think tank. He is like a Tony Stark, obviously. At the time, or the story that he's selling Mysterio, he wouldn't have known who Tony Stark was, but because he was lying the whole time and he's not from another dimension, he clearly knew who Tony Stark was. He clearly knew exactly who Tony Stark was. And the bottom line about that was that he could tell that Peter Parker was a brilliant mind because Mysterio had a brilliant mind. And because he noticed that kinship, it was easy to play on the kid's insecurities to garner the trust that it would take for the boy, or rather Peter Parker, to hand over Edith, which is what he really wanted from the very beginning. Now, with that being said, with Peter Parker having Edith now and mismanaging how to use it because it uses a lot of voice applications, it's just like how the first film, how he was with the first Spider-Man tech suit. He didn't know all these applications that was put within it, so he doesn't really know how to manage that. He even tried to use it for his own personal gain, and it almost led to like killing the jock that was trying to take Mary Jane's, or rather I keep saying Mary Jane's, but MJ's attention away from Peter Parker, because he actually liked MJ and he wanted to let her know that. So because he had Edith, he thought he could use Edith because it's an AI that he could actually use any method, not knowing the methods that he's using, because he doesn't know how to work Edith, to just stop this jock dude from basically cock blocking. Long story short, he ran up in, because Spider-Man is on this trip and you have Nick Fury is trying to use Spider-Man to basically be one of his agents to help fight this new elemental that showed up on Earth. And because he doesn't have access to the other Avengers, because a lot of them have an off-world, Thor already left with the Guardians of the Galaxy, Tony passed, Captain America, we already know that he's an old man, Widow passed. I mean, I don't know why they didn't look to Rhodey, but needless to say, we don't know if Rhodey is on another mission. So basically, the only super that he had access to, that he knew that was available, was Spidey. And because of that, he followed Spidey to, well, I won't say followed. Actually, they knew. It just so happened that with where they were going to stay at on their trip happened to be in the same exact location that Nick Fury needed him at. And the way he was coordinating it was to also send agents to suit Spidey up in a new suit, since he said he left his suit home. And he didn't, or rather, actually, he had the suit because, what is it? Aunt May had actually put it in the suitcase, but the thing is, he didn't want people to know that it was him and he was Spider-Man, because obviously, if Spider-Man shows up everywhere Peter Parker is, after a while, it won't take much to figure out who Spidey is. And so they had to give him a stealth suit, a black suit. And I actually thought the tactical suit was actually dope. A tactical black suit was actually dope and functional. I thought it was actually a great and cool design. But because he had to change in his suit while an agent had to separate him from his class so they could give him the new suit, in the process of changing, the jock came and walked in on him changing while standing in front of a grown woman who happened to be an agent that was providing the suit, telling him he had to suit up. So when the jock came in and saw it, he took a picture and he wanted to send it to MJ, and Peter Parker tried to use Edith to not only intercept it but stop the transaction from happening. And it damn near sent a drone and damn near almost killed everyone on the bus. You know what I mean? Just to stop that kid from delivering the message to MJ. So just in seeing that alone, you see that Peter Parker, it was way too much power for a young man to have. And maybe the reason why they also gave it to him, because I had discrepancies with that, was maybe it was voice activated through him. So in having Edith now and having this power and realizing, look, man, this is just too much expectations. I can't be another Tony Stark. I can't be. That's not who I am. And in doing so and seemingly ruining everything around him, even to the point of maybe even making the girl that he really liked look like she didn't matter to him, that he didn't like her, just trying to be Spider-Man, it was just a lot. He felt like he just couldn't do it. And in working with Mysterio, and Mysterio having this weird kind of connection with him, almost kind of mentoring him, filling that void that he readily had with Tony Stark. And, you know, with the beard and everything, when he even passed the glasses to him to try it on, I knew what that was about. He kind of reminded him of Tony Stark, and he thought maybe he's a brilliant mind. He clearly knows what he's doing. Maybe what I really was meant to do was find the next Tony Stark and hand it to them. Unfortunately, when he did that, we find out not shortly after he hands it to him, it's out there. This was actually the whole game. They were using Peter to get him to give up Edith. And then we find out that Mysterio actually used to work with Tony Stark once upon a time. And remember, if you ever remember, I believe in, I'm trying to remember, I think it was in beginning of Civil War, when he was trying out a virtual reality holographic simulation with him interacting a young Robert Downey Jr. or a young Tony Stark, if you will, in character, talking to his father at a young age. You find out that the guy that created that tech, or the guy that really was behind it, was Mysterio, working for Tony Stark. And he's a disgruntled employee, not too far off how they did Extremis in what is it? Iron Man 3. An disgruntled employee from way back long ago wants to take revenge on Tony Stark. In this case, Tony Stark died. He just wants the Edith protocol so he can actually use it to basically create a better illusions. He has more drones at liberty, and with the full support of Stark technology, he could even make his images and his illusions better than before, more convincing. And the point is, so he can create a scenario, be the solution, and become the hero, if you will, all artificially created, so he could gain the support of other people. So basically, it was just like him creating a movie for people to believe, and he is actually scripting it out, him and his team. And at the very end, and how this all cumulates, is when Peter Parker realized that he got used. He goes on the offensive to Mysterio. They fight it out, and at the end, we know what happens, and he puts out Peter Parker's identity as Spider-Man. But I want to, now with that being basically the whole crust of what was going on in a non-spoilery fashion, just so we can at least talk about the film, let's get into my major picks of the film, all right? Michelle versus Mary Jane Watson, the personality differences. The personality differences between the two are very, very different. Mary Jane Watson, I come from comic books. She was always the pretty girl, basically the Kelly Kapowski if this was Saved by the Bell. And Peter Parker would be kind of like, you don't want to say Zach Morris with it, but it would be more like Screech and Lisa without Lisa being so anti-Screech, if you will. So let's say if Zach was more like Screech, and Mary Jane Watson was more like Kelly Kapowski for Saved by the Bell. She was the it girl, the top one, the most popular girl in school, but she was very, very down to earth. And she had humbling beginnings if you ever watched that show from way back when, you feel me? So at the end of the day, now you have Mary Jane Watson, the character is completely different in idea and personality towards the new placement character for her, which is MJ, which is Michelle Jones. She's a very cute girl. Like she's got this tomboyish goth attitude without it being goth. It's more tomboyish. You know, she acts like she's darker than what she is, but she's fully confident with who she is, no matter, despite how people may feel about her, which I think makes her a very cool character even in this incarnation. And if you're starting her off like this at a young age, you can actually transform her into more of what Mary Jane Watson eventually becomes as an older woman. You know, because then you can actually create a character arc from her being the quote unquote ugly duckling that no one knew was a bad chick, if you will. Give her some time, and then she comes back to be this bad top tier soap opera star, model, all of that. And that can actually work, because now you give a lot more interest and you give a lot more dimensions to who MJ can be, especially when you want to fulfill nuances, because she is a supporting character to Spider-Man. Now, what I will say is this new incarnation of MJ, she shines best as a friend, and like I said again, the confidently awkward tomboy girl. You know what I mean? She shines best as that. She plays the awkwardness of a youth very, very well. I like how her banter back and forth with Peter, especially in the first film, was kind of dope. They had this like cute antagonistic, we're still friends, but we like to. She likes to come at me all the time, but I'm just usually like whatever. But that's just the nature of their relationship. You know what I mean? And it kind of works for the world that they created. And I actually found that to be something that worked in favor of trying to create a new type of MJ counterpart, if you will, in Michelle Jones, which is, from what I understand, is an amalgamation of a Michelle character that actually existed in the comics before, I guess, Spider-Man actually got with MJ. I wasn't familiar with her. And from what I understood, she was black of some sort, or might have been Hispanic. I can't remember, and I'm not sure because I didn't really read the book on it, but I actually heard people talk about it before. So I'll probably do a lot more talk about Spider-Man's and breakdowns in the future, so we'll get into all of that when it's necessary. But the point being is that it actually works. This new type of dynamic between the two, this new incarnation of MJ, it actually works for the story that they're trying to tell, especially keeping them in high school for a longer portion of his cinematic experience. You know, that means that we'll have at least 3 films of him in high school. That being said, now, another pick was Ned's relationship with his love interest. It was all played for comedic value, but it was also to show how, dang man, my best friend got a girlfriend. He didn't have a girlfriend getting on a plane. And in trying to have us create a scenario where we could switch seats and I could sit with MJ, he ends up sitting right next to or having someone sit right next to him that you would have never thought that they would have ever liked each other even to beginning, but by the end of the flight, their girlfriend and boyfriend, the whole trip, their girlfriend and boyfriend, and when they come back, they've became big. They've had a whole full relationship and handled the breakup in a very adult manner. I might say it was kind of it was played up for comedic value, well done, well executed. It was cute. It works for the way they've set up the universe, and Ned is what he's supposed to be, the comic relief, the best friend, and he plays it very well into a T. And to be honest, he is an amalgamation of a new character, quote unquote, and a character that comes out of Miles Morales' Spider-Man, his best friend. Now, another pick with me it's a smart move keeping them in high school. It actually gives you a lot more time to build up their characters. And remember, we're not always the same type of people we were when we were in high school. A lot of us make a lot of big 360s. So the interesting thing will be is to see the arc that takes you from how you were when you were prepubescent teen to being going through the maturity and becoming an adult. And this would actually be the first time we could actually take a whole character and build them out through not only just his film trilogy, but through other films and still have a big arc. And we could evolve them into something more. So when we sit back and say, after, let's say, 5 solo outings, however many shared films he's been in or popped up in, we could actually watch his growth. And I think that would be the first time we could actually do that on a cinematic level, what we've actually been able to do in TV shows that have gone on for years, especially with, young children. We basically see them grow all the way up on a show of, like, let's say 8 years or even 5 years. So again, like I said, I think it was a smart move to do that. You have more time, and you can actually really build this character up from the ground up. Another major pick. I talked about it before already, but it needs its own specific shine. Mary Jane and Pete's chemistry was played up very well. Even when she made the joke about how she knew that he was Spider-Man, and then he end up effing up and just blurting it all out. She was like, well, I wasn't really all the way sure. I mean, I kind of was wondering, but I wasn't really sure. Like I said, I was. So you're Spider-Man now. Okay, that's what it is. And like I said, I love their banter because the way they bounce back and forth off each other, it seems so natural. Like they actually have chemistry offset. Like I could believe when they're off camera, they're actually cool. I could actually believe that they talk to each other off to the side about stuff. So I really find that to be probably one of the hallmarks of the whole film was their banter, but most importantly, their chemistry, even when they had the little awkward kiss. And people may argue now at 16, we got so much at our disposal that the innocence level of a child might not be that high up at the age of 16. But I will argue this. Yeah, it is for a lot. Now, in generality, yeah, a lot of these kids are aged up. We got internet, we got cell phones. Yeah, but I love how you can still find the innocence in when you like a girl and you still want that still always exists, even if you're an adult. I mean, it plays itself out in a more mature level, I would like to think, but still, strip everything away, and we're just like young kids trying to express how we feel to each other. And it's like the puppy love angle was actually dope, and I think they sold me on it. And I think they sold a lot of people on their relationship, the awkwardness, even when they had their first kiss. It just, I don't know, it just felt like how kids are. Now, albeit I feel like that's more like when you're 11 and 12, but at the same time, it'd be a lie to say that you haven't been in high school, whether it was you or not. You might have developed in a lot of different ways, but you didn't develop your social skills and your romantic skills in trying to have a relationship with someone. Nor have we, you know what I mean, like gotten to that level. You feel me? So, like, I really think that when you're trying to express yourself to someone, just the awkwardness of it as a child, and I think even at that age, it still rings true. You know, we might upsell it in a lot more of a mature manner with a whole lot more curse words, acting like we're much older than what we are. But you know, that's the world, the real world. But even in this TV sense, I thought that if you strip all of that away and you really just focus on the aim of it, yo, it's very real world. Everyone has awkwardness when you're trying to approach the girl that you like. That's nothing. So I thought that they played that up very well. And I don't know, I mean, ladies, let me know. Do you feel like I said, it may not look like that, but the idea, the concept, the awkwardness, do you feel like it kind of rings true to having how puppy love works when you're a child, when you're a kid? And the awkwardness it is when you want to express yourself, but you're probably not the best at it, especially when it's to someone you like. Let me know, man. But I just thought that that was something that they kind of hit on, and I think they kind of scored with. Um, Next is Pixar happy being a good supporting actor towards Spidey. He also fills in the blank of what we kind of miss out with an adult that with that like I guess that adult figure, if you will, to bounce off of that we had with Tony Stark. I think Happy was a pretty good sub to facilitate the necessity of even having that with Tony Stark. And I thought it was a cool new balance. It made it fresh to have him to bounce off someone. And we've seen their banter before, but now that in absence of Tony, Happy will start to step up more and assume more of the role of that mentorship that a young kid like Spidey will need moving forward, and kind of worked within the realm of the film. Another big pick is, even though Iron Man is not in the film, his presence is heavily weighted over the entirety of the film. It's a running through theme, if you will. And that being said, Iron Man becomes the new Uncle Ben. He is to Spider-Man now what in the cinematic universe what Uncle Ben was in the comic books. Now, there's an argument that Uncle Ben actually exists in this universe, if you will, in this incarnation, which I do believe, because Spider-Man was kind of already a year in when he showed up in Captain America. Matter of fact, I think 6 months in. So Uncle Ben could have passed. They had all of that. And I think they could actually, which makes it even interesting, is you can actually go back to that and revisit that, if you like, in a new trilogy down the line when he's more of an adult. And now he's being more reflective of his uncle. And you find out, then we can bridge it all together. From what I understood, people who were very well with the pause button found that there was an Easter egg that the suitcase that Spidey leaves in to go on that, I guess, that trip with that was supposed to be like a academic one for Tony Stark, which was really doubling to bring Spider-Man over there to be part of the Civil War fight. People noticed that you see like a B. Parker engraved on the suitcase, and I thought that was actually dope because it lets you know that that continuity, that part of Spider-Man in just lore alone is part of it, but we're not gonna focus on it because we've kind of did that already for 2 incarnations of Spider-Man within the past, I guess, 20 years. For some people that's too much, but I feel like for them, they looked at it, we told that story, let's do it this way. And the way we're bringing Spider-Man in such a manner that we don't really have to address it. So Ben Parker doesn't have to cast the same kind of shadow the way he did in other films. So we can actually do our best to make ourselves and separate the MCU's Spider-Man from any other Spider-Man that predated without the full backing of the MCU the way they have in this installment. And I think it works for the film that they're trying to depict. Yes, I am a canonist, if you will. I would prefer us focus on it the way I read it. But at the same time, I'm not so disillusioned to not realize, like, you gotta adjust for the times that in which the film comes out. You know? And there's certain ways you can tell the story without having to go through it the same sterile way we always do. We start off with Ben Parker dying, what is the phrase again? With great power comes great responsibility. He used to fight in a circus. We don't need all of that. Like, we could actually take him to Civil War very quick by just saying Tony Stark has been observing him for the past 6 months since he's been posting it on YouTube. Like I said, I love how they're working in the new world we live in while still making it true to the core of the book. And that's what I actually respect. Now, Mysterio, the costume. I love the costume. I actually even like the mocap that they use. And it'd be a funny Easter egg if that's the same mocap that they used when filming the film as well. But in any event, I love the fact of how they correlated his tangible suit, if you will, and the actual suit he's wearing under the illusion, and the suit that he will have to have pressed and look well for when he takes photos. And I love the fact of how they show the dichotomy of it. I love the idea that Mysterio isn't really just one man. He is a whole act. He is one movie onto himself. He has people working different things at different moments. You see him rewinding things, creating the story that they're going to sell out to the masses, and using like empty warehouses to try the drones out to make sure the drones are acting in the proper fashion so they could sell this quote unquote movie that is this fake attack, so that they could, because the more convincing it is, the better off his plan is gonna go off with. Actually, that's the only way the plan is going to work at its most optimum. The best, the more convincing that these holographic images and the destruction around it can be, the more likelihood of him actually being successful in the end game of coming in and being the savior for everyone, creating the problem and being the solution. But like I said, I just love how they did the suit. The suit was so comic book accurate, but I like how it makes sense to the film. He just wanted a bullshit super suit that he could sell so he could look like he is another superhero that popped up after the blip from another dimension. So it explains why he looks weird. It explains the over the topness of the suit, but most importantly, it sells the story that he created to convince the masses that he is a superhero. And I thought that it was just brilliant the way they realized his powers, how they showed how it worked in tandem with the drones making the actual real world destruction, all while creating the illusion and the marriage between the two. And then showing where he is offset somewhere, walking around in a mocap suit with a bubble over his head and all the wires and stuff, so he could work Edith and everything all at once while talking to the woman that's pressing his suit for when he's ready for his photo ops. Like I said, so dope. And last but not least, a big pick is the Daily Bugle as an online news source and how they introduce it to be almost like on par with InfoWars Online and kind of parodying him alongside Alex Jones, which I noticed a lot of people had said before, and I thought, to be honest, you're absolutely right. And it kind of works for the story that they're telling in the present world by making the Daily Bugle something as an online news source, making J. Jonah Jameson more of a quote-unquote conspiracy theorist, if you will, always trying to be a truth seeker and all of that other stuff online. And the truth is Spider-Man's a villain. It really was a smart way of utilizing what goes on today and marrying it with what was going on in a book that was written years and years and several years ago before the inception of the internet. So it was a cool way to kind of show a real world updated version of what the Bugle could be in this day and age. And again, like I said, I think it's dope. And it also probably makes sense how they could commission out a Peter Parker to take pictures of a Spider-Man that's hard to get. It kind of works right, because now he's not working on in mainstream news sources, so it gives him more wiggle room to get away with certain stuff. And like I said, I mean, I thought it was just a dope idea, a dope concept, and a dope way to bring the story up to date and do it in a visual manner as well. Now, I do have nitpicks, so I hope you guys are ready. Aunt May knowing Peter's secret was irking the shit out of me. I'm not gonna lie. It was really irking the shit out of me. She was too excited to have basically her son, even though that's his aunt. You're his guardian. You're like his mom. And she is so quirk with this quirky enthusiasm to see him go out there and be in danger. And I get it, he's super, but he got caught up in a blip. He's not that kind of durable. He can be hurt. So it was just weird to see her. Don't forget your suit. I want you to do this. I want you to do that. I want you to talk to the people and standing behind them and the Iron Spider suit. It was just weird. It was just weird to see Aunt May like this. Like I thought it didn't look realistic. This is where now the film started to take on the role of being very Disney cartoony. And not in a negative way really, but it was kind of just jarring because I still have to buy into the real world applications of it. So you want to kind of make this, the aim is to make you, convince you that this can happen, so you can actually feel like you're part of the film, not to take it on on the level of a cartoon. And that was, I don't want to say a problem, like I said, it was a nitpick of mine. Just even, and it was more in concept than delivery, because the delivery I was entertained, I'd be lying, but in concept it just doesn't make sense that you would be this enthused for your child to go out there and just risk his whole life. I thought that was weird. I thought that was one of the weirdest things it was just weird. But I just was like, all right, this is the movie you're creating, so you know what? Show me the movie. And like I said, I really love the movie, but that was a nitpick of mine. Like, I would not have done that as a Spider-Man fan, and that being my favorite comic book hero since I was a kid. I didn't have a natural resolve with that. It was just weird. It was weird. I just would not have done that. It was a choice that I just thought that they didn't have to make. Because now it takes away the drama of when you ever want to address his identity literally being out there. But he's been, even in the movie, I take off your mask, we all know it's you here. That rubbed me wrong. Just that rubbed me wrong. But we'll get to that. But Aunt May in particular, that really rubbed me wrong. In concept, just like a mother figure being okay and being his number one cheerleader as Spider-Man, it just threw me off. Again, another nitpick, again, I gotta bring this up, and I've said it before, is Spider-Man being handled as if he's Junior. It's Iron Man Junior. Not so bad this go out with it, because he wasn't using like the spider drone on his chest and all of that, but the making of this suit with all of this extra stuff, I like the fact that Spider-Man made his shit at home all onto himself. But the way they did it on the ship, on the plane, when he was creating his suit while he was trying to get taken back to go fight Mysterio and reclaim Edith. I like how you see him working everything, listening to the music. They make the Led Zeppelin joke, and Happy's just looking at him, and everything he's doing to build his suit was a mirrored image of what happened in Iron Man 1, with how he was using the 3D printers to create it and design it, and the holographic images, so he can make sure that he could do the holographic tweaks before he went to actual production. I just thought that was just dope. It was a brilliant way of doing it, but again, I'm not a fan of this Spider-Man Iron Man Jr. thing. It's handled a little bit better here. But like I said, I'm not a fan of him having AI in his mask and all of that shit. No. So at least he kind of designed it using Stark Tech, his new suit. But at least it makes more, it's less techy. You know what I mean? Like Spider-Man he fight, he banter, he wasn't Batman. He didn't throw like a whole bunch of Spider-Man batarangs and stuff. I know in certain times he's even used the Spider-Man light before in a comic. And if I'm not mistaken, I remember seeing that in a comic years ago. Kind of like how he's shown it in at the end of Civil War on the ceiling. But like I said, he wasn't a big tech-heavy superhero. That just never was Spider-Man to begin with. Again, his secret identity, not so much a secret. I spoke on it before. That's another of my nitpicks. Spoke on it already. No need to really rehash it. He took his mask off in front of Mysterio and all the agents, and they made sure the agents, what is it? Nick Fury let it be known that the agents already knew who he was, so it just feels like there is no hiding. In the second movie, MJ knows, so you took that dynamic off. You took the dynamic of him having two lives. That could have been a whole third movie. So it just feels like everyone knows who Spider-Man is, and if you see how it ends, and before we get into the post-credit scenes with him, Mysterio dying. But before he dies, he says, "Hey, Peter Parker is Spider-Man," and it's like, again, you always associating his name with Spider-Man. So when he's the guy taking pictures of Spider-Man, even though you could argue, well, how could you have both at the same time? It's just gonna be ridiculous. Now you can use the Edith protocol and make a holographic image of Spider-Man and it shows Spider-Man out and about when. Like Peter's someplace else. There's ways you can make it work, but I feel like they wrote themselves into a corner by taking one of the biggest stakes on the table that he ever had was the preservation of his identity, and that also being the way he preserves all his loved ones. And again, like I said, I just didn't think that for you to remove that in the second film may down the line work against the character. So when you try anything with his identity after the fact, it'll feel like we've already done this already. So what's the point? The CG's being too obvious is another nitpick of mine. Even though the CGI looked amazing on screen, Spider-Man to me, a lot of times he just looked like a CG image because they were doing so much with the visuals that after a while he looked more animated than actual person in a costume. So a lot of times when he throws a costume on, it looks like that has to be a whole computer image. Well, a lot of shots, let's put it that way. And the point of CG to me is to be convincing. So, and like that's how I look at it, convincing that it's actually there. And like I said, even though it's great and the CG is dope, it's still supposed to convince. And for me, his head always looks way too tiny when he has his mask on than it was when he takes it off. And usually in a kid's body, your head is a little bit naturally bigger for your frame. So when you get older and you fill out, then everything looks trimmed and in place. So it's just weird when he puts a mask on. I noticed that even with the figures, like the Hot Toy figures, the head looks always small when it's masked, way smaller when it's masked than it does when he takes off the mask. And that's always been like a little peeve of mine. Like I noticed that in the first movie too. It's just always a little odd. It looks like his head is smaller when he's in costume. Like I said, that's just a nitpick of mine. It just looked like it doesn't match his Tom Holland in proportion. But you should see it on. I'm gonna put it on screen for you guys so you can see, and you tell me how you feel. I don't know. That's how it feels though when you look at it. But that being said, last but not least, just to talk about the end credit scenes. Obviously, we already talked about the first end credit scene when Mysterio blames Spider-Man for his death. And, unbeknownst to other people, they don't know Mysterio was the bad guy the whole time. And then he discloses before the world that Spider-Man is actually Peter Parker. And, we have that dope scene where he goes, "What the?" And it cuts, which was a dope way to end. But it was like, you're already giving up who he is already. Like, it was dope to see it in the theaters. But even in the theaters, I was like, oh, please don't do that. Don't do that. Because now you just took another element off the table. And he's not even an adult yet. So now with that off the table, if you ever try to revisit it, it kind of dilutes the whole identity thing because we already played with that before. I just feel like that was something that we can handle down the line when he was an adult. But even more so, the other end credit scene, finding out that Nick Fury wasn't really Nick Fury. He was one of the I think they were Creed. That's what they call that alien civilization, but they were the shapeshifters working at the behest of Nick Fury, who was actually physically off world in it in global orbit, developing what will eventually be known as Sword, which will be the natural evolution, or rather the updated version of what Shield used to be for Earth. Now we're dealing with Sword, which is going to be intergalactic, because we have aliens, we have intergalactic beings, we already got blipped out of the universe, so it's a step in the right direction. What kind of peeved me really was what that was. You felt like that was the first time that Peter Parker and Nick Fury met, but that wasn't the case. And it was highly unfortunate that that would be the case. And just seeing that alone was just kind of effed up. Because I felt like I would like to see them to naturally meet each other, not have to do it through buffers and stuff like that. So, yeah, with that being said, that's actually the review. Went on a little longer than I thought it was gonna go, but not as long as it could have, because this is actually my second recording of it, and the second recording was a little over an hour, and I'm just under an hour. So again, man, I wanted this to be more conversational. I wanted us to talk about it, have fun, really get into the nitty gritty of the films and what we like about it. And again, like I said, this is an excellent addition to what they're doing and how they're building out the Spider-Man franchise. I like what I see so far. And like I said, as always, man, it's not about what I think. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know how you felt about my picks. Do you have any additional picks? How you felt about my nitpicks? Any additional nitpicks that you might have, or any concerns moving forward? Leave it all down below, man. So, as always, man, like, share, subscribe. See you next time. And as always, till I have a better outro. Cheers.